we see a connection between these groups and these groups and these groups and these groups, that maybe the same thing should be done as you propose.
Put all the educational functions into the Department of Education. Put all the social services departments into the Department of Human Resource Development. Put all the correctional departments, youth, adult, everything in between, into the Department of Community and Institutional Rehabilitation. Consolidate all of the commerce and other business functions into the Department of Business. You know, it's not that difficult to see the similarities of services with corrections or environmental and natural resources with education. But again, this isn't locked in stone. Folks, if the governor or anybody out there has some ideas where we need to finesse this to get there, we're open-minded to the process, but we think this discussion needs to happen. And I'll turn that over to Mary Batchelder.
Every so often I feel like I've come into a movie for the second time. In this case, I can well remember Governor Gilligan, who was a very elegant man and governor of the state, who started splitting up departments. And so we ended up with more of them. Remember, they first separated the Department of Corrections from mental health and mental retardation. Then they separated mental health and mental retardation, and so it went, to the point where the complexity of these things led to a situation in which, under a previous governor, they made the mistake of appointing as the #2 man in that department a former legislator from a rural area. And he eliminated one whole level of the jobs. He got rid of individual automobiles. He cut the motor pool to 1/3 of what it had been, and so forth and so on. It gives you the tone of it. He was gone for a year. They were back. So were the cars. The capacity of bureaucracy to grow and to metastasize is almost infinite. And it requires a vigilant legislature, which is charged with the responsibility of collecting funds to run the government and to appropriate those funds. It takes that kind of vigilance on our part continually to look at this. I'd be the last guy in the world to make a case that in recent years that has been done. I do believe that, as my friend the senator said, the time is now. As Ronald Reagan said, if it's not us, who? And if it's not now, when? We have to do this. We have to do it in part because when we have that huge bulk overwhelming, we don't render the same level and quality of services through the local level that we should be from state government. This actually will result in better services to the public, in my opinion. And we've seen that happen in the past. So we today are really looking at something that ought to have been done earlier. The last time that I recall an overall cleansing of the place was Jim Rhodes in 1963 when he became governor, and he fired 10% of the people and things went along all right, so he fired another 5%. And I don't want to suggest that perhaps part of that motivation was that the previous governor had been of another faith politically, and perhaps had hired that last 15% of the people. But in any case, when they got done, well, the state had a lot fewer employees. And that was the last time we had a budget with the kind of very small growth that Governor Strickland gave us in his last budget. I think the time is now.
Last time the state tried a agency consolidation was the creation of the Department of Job and Family Services. I don't know too many people around the State House who thought that was particularly smooth or overly successful, at least at the beginning.
I'm waiting for the success part.
Can I comment on that?
And that's why I was wondering, is there something to learn from that, or how do we avoid that on a grand scale, if you're, what you're talking about?
Back in '98, as Governor Taft was running, he and I spoke about my aspirational goal that someday we'd start seeing some cleanup of state government. And I laid out the notion, kind of rudimentary plan comparable to what I talked about when I was presenting this in the early 2000s. And I said, you know, there's an opportunity for consolidation. It's a good thing. You can go over a 6-year period or an 8-year period. You can do this. You don't need to do it in 2 years. You can phase it in. Education to me was always the most important because that's where we're so splintered with so little control over the education bureaucracy. The governor appointed a commissioner of education. That could change a lot. And I think it could give a real focus on K through 16 broadly as to how the state's going to fund and manage its educational obligations. Well, we talked about all those things, and After he was in office for about a year or so, he called me one day and he said, you know, the consolidation stuff we talked about, he says, we're going to do it. We're going to put human services together with Department of Employment Services. We're going to, I said, who? Bad choices. It just, they didn't work to work that. And while you can understand that you're going to create a large agency sometime, creating one from 2,700 employees who've been institutionalized for all those years in their own setting, and another one with, I think, 1,700 employees. I think at the time that it was announced, we were talking about a consolidation that would grow to 4,400 employees. It just wasn't going to work. I didn't feel confident that is the kind of choices you need to make. There are choices that are made, and I mean, it was an initiative, but it wasn't established via a plan, which is where this is different. This is a comprehensive plan. It really does try to equalize some of the sizes of departments. It doesn't have one that balloons in size when compared to others. It's got some rationale to it, and I think that's an important component.
You talked to the